The next item on the agenda is discuss and decide on a resolution declaring a climate crisis and committing to accelerated efforts to limit the global average temperature increase. Now, we do have quite a lengthy resolution here. I'm not going to read it all the way, but I do have some comments that I'll share, and I wonder if someone from the Sunrise Movement or any other activist groups would want to approach the mic here and share some comments or thoughts about this resolution.
Thank you for your time today. Jason Snell, Sunrise Movement. I was here maybe 2 months ago. Thank you for your time today and considering this resolution. Last time we went through some of the future projections of inaction, and the UN came out with this year's climate report, and carbon emissions increased this last year worldwide. And so we have to move our target, instead of reduction by 45%, it needs to be 55% within 10 years. One of the things that I've learned since I met with you last was I didn't have really an understanding of what this window of time we're in right now is. And originally it was 12 years, and more recently people have described it as 8.5 years. And I knew that something bad was at the end of that. I didn't understand what it was, and I have a better understanding of that, and I can share that with you. The first important thing to understand is that when I was thinking, let's say we got our entire act together globally today, we reduced carbon emissions within target goals, I thought maybe the climate would snap back into a good place. For example, like the 1990s climate. I thought snap back maybe like 5 years or 10 years, once we started, stopped emitting so much carbon. Unfortunately, the way that the planetary system works is the climate that we have today. So if we got our act together today, we will have this climate for 200 to 300 years. And so if we wait until it's really bad, that will be the climate we see for the rest of our lives. So that was something, once it dawned on me, has really changed the importance of action on this. That today is the best climate that any of us will see in our lifetimes. And then the second aspect is this window of time, and it has to do with heat feedback loops. And probably a good metaphor for it is avalanches. So imagine, standing at the top of a mountain, and the ice is there, everything's compacted, it's not moving, and we're taking a blowtorch to the top. And the scientists are saying, hey, if you keep using this blowtorch, there's going to be an avalanche. So we're at the point now where we're in a window of time where we can act. We do have agency currently. But once the avalanche starts, we can't stop it. Because once that movement happens, and they're called heat feedback loops. And a good example would be, as the Arctic is melting, because of the heat, it releases more methane, which then increases the heat, which then speeds up the melting. That's one of the heat feedback loops. And there's a whole system of those that start to spiral out into eventually what will be a death spiral for the species. In terms of Iowa specifically, I've got a little more information. One of the main concerns besides desertification and the loss of our farmland is, so the southern United States, if we look at Los Angeles and the Southwest, and Texas and Florida, between increasing heat and then flooding, and most of Florida will be gone, Houston will be gone. That's tens of millions of climate refugees, and where they'll head is north. And so they'll head up through Iowa. And at some point, if we don't act, we'll have to start to make plans for how we deal with tens of millions of climate refugees. And then at a certain point, as the heat increases, we ourselves will become refugees and trying to flee up further north to Canada or Alaska. So those are longer term projections. And that would be around 2100. So it may not be something we see, but it's something our children would see. I wish I had better news. But it just underscores the importance of this. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for being a part of a group of people in our community that is trying to sound the alarm. To be totally honest with you, man, when I came to office and my focus was not on climate. It was and remains on social justice issues and how we treat folks in our community who have never had any sort of efficacy or agency, and who have never had their voice listened to. That's sort of been my driving focus. And I remember State Senator Rob Hogue, there was a point in his life where this became his issue. And every time I run into him, he'd talk to me about this. And I kind of say, you know, I appreciate it. It always seemed like an abstract issue to me. It always seemed, quite honestly, like something, you know, well-to-do white folks with a lot of time on their hand talk about. That's what it seemed like to me. And as I have had folks like you, I mean, I was really moved by your last presentation, honestly. To have folks like you explain the seriousness of this issue, and then I think about, well, what is my job as a policymaker in the here and now? Yes, we have to solve problems that present itself in the immediate. We have to help as many people as we can right now in our jobs, but we also owe it to the future. And we have to think about what decisions are we making right now that are going to impact 2 or 3 generations down the road. And when you start thinking about this stuff, and you know, and I'll say this here in some of my comments from reading the resolution, if we don't get it right on the climate, then nothing else matters, right? No other issue that we all care about. If this planet isn't habitable by the end of the century, then we won't have people to care about affordable housing. We won't have people to care about whether or not they have any kind of housing, homelessness, or mental illness, or our park system, or anything else that we spend a lot of time thinking about. It goes away if we don't get this right. And that's when it, and my understanding, particularly with my concern for marginalized communities and people of color, they will be the last folks that are helped. They won't have the resources to shield themselves from the consequences of catastrophic climate change. They won't have, advocates, as many advocates in positions of power and influence. And so when you think about communities that will be harmed the most, it's a situation as old as the world. It will be the communities with the least amount of power. They will be harmed the most because they won't have the resources, whether it's social, political capital, or financial resources to guard against these things. And so as I think about, what I came into politics to do to help this issue, honestly, probably within the last year of my life has become more present. And I'm thankful and appreciative of you for helping me in my own evolution as an elected official in that. So I have some comments. Do you have any comments before I read my prepared remarks?
Sure. Jason and to the others, really thank you very much for this presentation and for allowing us to vote on a resolution of this magnitude. You just said something, Supervisor Walker, that has hit me the last couple of years. The issue of climate has sort of been in the abstract until I had children. And then it becomes very, very real. And I journal for my kids so that I can give them as a gift later in life, sort of how their life unfolded as I saw it. And I find myself writing outside of things they've done. It's climate. Here are the things that are happening. We know it's happening. We're just not doing what needs to be done. And by the time you're reading this 30 years from now, I have no idea the world that will exist. The end of the century is a little bit further away than where we are today from World War II, if you put it in those regards. And that generation's very small but still exists. And that actually sort of terrifies me. that we are at this point where if we do not, by the end of the century, which again seems far off, World War II seems very far away from me, except that generation is here. This is something not in the abstract. And I was very actually shaken, as these conversations tend to leave me shaken, that if we do everything right today, this is the climate that will exist. Best case scenario. And I didn't think about the snapback, that maybe in a decade or two, things will start settling down. No, it will be far beyond any generations that we can conceive of. So I'm very happy to support this in ways to try and achieve these benchmarks. So thank you very much.
Supervisor Olson?
Sure. I approach this a little different. I'm not usually fond of doing global type resolutions or resolutions of statement that I can't do anything about, really. But I look at myself as I ran to have a community impact, and this is a career that allowed me to have a community impact as a member of the Linn County Board of Supervisors. So in Iowa, of the 99 rectangles, this little rectangle here is kind of the domain which I can have an impact. So I will support this resolution. I'll say what I appreciate about it. That you didn't put anything in there that singled out a specific industry or a specific agricultural practice or something that the citizens, are doing where we can point a finger and say, you must change that. So it laid out globally the issues and had some targets that we could, if everybody came into a room, could kind of get their arms around it, then go out to figure out those specific things where changes would need to be made without pointing the finger. So I'll support that, and so the resolution then can be a guide for not only myself but future public servants in this role to look back to when a specific issue comes up or a specific industry, to have that in dialogue to the extent that we can as a Board of Supervisors.
So I'll just share my thoughts on the matter that I wrote yesterday about this resolution. Again, I want to begin by thanking the Sunrise Movement activists for their work to raise awareness about the climate threats facing our communities, our country, and our planet. Part of their work includes educating policymakers who have within their abilities the power to do something to address the menace of climate change. We all know that no one politician or government can do it alone, but all of us can do something. And in the end, it will be the collection of these acts, the small and the big, that will give us a fighting chance of leaving a healthy planet for generations to come. One of the parts of the resolution that stood out to me was the snapshot of the aggregate United Nations climate studies, which predicts devastating consequences if we continue to drag our feet on climate action. Those consequences include large regions of the planet made uninhabitable through extreme heat, flooding, and desertification, which would create over 1 billion climate refugees across the globe. The complete functional collapse of our farming, food, and clean water systems. Extinction of 50% of all species. All of this scheduled to happen by the end of the century. We should be emotional about these reports. They should make us uncomfortable, but more than anything, they should inspire us to act. I will be the first to admit that our regulatory power as a local government is quite limited, and that the bulk of carbon-emitting industry in this county exists in the city of Cedar Rapids, who have their own municipal government and their own ways of dealing with these issues. But even still, we will do our part to mitigate carbon emissions within our own organization, reduce it when possible, and as a general rule, encourage good behavior in the private sector and punish bad behavior through fines, fees, zoning authority, and other mechanisms. This board will soon consider bringing on a sustainability coordinator to help us better understand our overall environmental impact and develop a strategy to achieve our goals on climate action. We remain committed to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, and we stand with our partners in the community and other governments in the private sector to confront one of the greatest threats to our survival in our history. If we don't get this right, nothing else matters. So with that said, I will ask for a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. The resolution is approved.
Thank you so much.
We will get this signed and get it to you by the end of the meeting.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.